You see it in seed, you see it in fertilizer, you see it on the input side, you see it on the market side. And in the state of Iowa, you see these multinational corporations extract the wealth from our communities and leave us with literal shit. Welcome to Cornhole Champions, a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line, where we throw bags at the state's biggest stories. I'm Zachary Oren Smith. It's Wednesday, and I'm joined today by Iowa Starting Line's community editor, Amie Rivers. We're at Iowa's show, but we're not blind to the national. Trump is president, and we take a trip through the bin of executive orders he signed this week, from the blatantly unconstitutional to the firmly unconstitutional. A great deal of those orders target Iowans. We talk about what you can do to help. And while we're talking about the inauguration, let's talk about who's allowed in the rotunda to watch it and who's not. That's coming up on Cornhole Champions. So, what's our cold open going to be?
The cold, right?
The
cold as the cold open?
You think the cold open should be just talking about cold weather?
I mean, we are an Iowa-based podcast, I feel like.
And if we're an Iowa-based podcast, then the way this happens is we're in line. I'm going to set a scene for you, okay?
Okay.
We're in line at the Come and Go, right?
Yeah.
The branding hasn't changed. The Salt Lake City Maverick Company hasn't stolen this iconic Iowan vista from us. We are at Come & Go gasoline and convenience store. And I'm going up to pay for, I've got in my hand one slice of not Casey's breakfast pizza, Come and Go breakfast pizza. And I've got one pepino limon flavored Gatorade. What do you have in your hands, Amie?
Obviously, Dilly Bites.
You have sacrilegious Dilly Bites, and what else? You have a drink?
Oh yeah, definitely the Karuba Gold coffee that they've got.
Karuba, not Caribou.
Oh no, Caribou's in like the Hy-Vee gas stations.
Oh,
so,
interesting.
Yeah,
Karuba.
No, Karuba with a K. Yeah, Karuba Gold.
What's that named after?
It's legit. I mean, it's pretty good coffee as far as gas station coffee goes. Right. I recommend.
You got your Karuba Gold, which sounds like booze. It sounds like a Karuba Gold. It sounds like something I would have drank in college.
You could put booze in it, I suppose. Yeah, it's cold enough.
Okay, and I turn around to you and I say, "Cold out there."
Yeah.
It is really cold out there. There is no pretense about it. It was negative 14 degrees when I drove to the Capitol this morning.
Yeah, it's angrily cold. It's the kind of cold where people are like, I'm not going outside. I'm not going to the grocery store. I'm going to call in sick, or I'm going to like cancel all my appointments. Like, it's that cold. The dog is not getting his morning walk. He's mad about it, by the way, because he's a husky. And he would rather just me drop him off in like the Arctic or something so he can run around.
This is prime husky weather.
This is prime husky. He's got a double coat. He doesn't care. Yeah, he just sits outside. He's like, it's sunny. Let's go.
It's
I'm like,
sunny.
can we
Let's
wait till it
happen.
gets like above 0? Is that fine? So I can actually not like freeze my eyelashes when I go outside like I did yesterday.
But that's like for the really good selfie. You gotta have the little. It's like the frozen eyelashes that do this number.
It's a popular selfie.
It is. I think so. I think it's like if you get a little bit of frost, it shows. Oh yeah, I do it for the gram. I walk this talk. I do it for the gram.
More power to you. You got to make the cold work.
We do it for the gram. First story, Trump versus the U.S. Constitution. It's official. Donald J. Trump has returned to the presidency. And on the first day of his second term, Trump unveiled dozens of executive orders that target everything from immigration to the environment, tariffs to trade. Let's dive in.
Maybe we should start with the birthright citizenship thing, right? The 14th Amendment thing. The very unconstitutional idea that we should not be granting citizenship to people that are born here. So, I mean, can you go into, I guess, the elimination in general and basically what is birthright citizenship?
Yeah, let's start there. So birthright citizenship it's a concept that's guaranteed by the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It's a legal right to citizenship for all children born in the country's territory, regardless of parentage. This has been not been a controversial part of our Constitution until Trump decided to make it one, right? This has been kind of a firmament assumption that for people born here, right, people who live here, people who work here, that they have a right to to citizenship in this country, to legal status in this country. And this has become, since Trump signed this executive order seeking to strip certain babies born in the United States of their citizenship. The ACLU has filed a case. The ACLUs of several states have filed a case looking to get the courts to challenge this, right? I mean, this has been kind of a bedrock piece of our, a bedrock piece of kind of our, the way we think about citizenship in this country. Anthony R. Romero, executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union, said, denying citizenship to U.S.-born children is not only unconstitutional, it's also a reckless and ruthless repudiation of American values. Birthright citizenship is part of what makes the United States the strong and dynamic nation that it is. This order seeks to repeat one of the gravest errors in American history by creating a permanent subclass of people born in the U.S. who are denied full rights as Americans. We will, and this is Romero here, we will not let this attack on newborns and future generations of Americans go unchallenged. The Trump administration's overreach is so egregious that we're confident we will ultimately prevail. Amie, what did you make of this move by the Trump this first day move by the Trump administration?
I mean, first of all, it's sort of half-baked, right? I think they are making a case, right, which is not true, that people come across the border from a different country, both parents are not from here, and they have a baby, and then that baby is a citizen. And there's so many gray areas, though, that, like, what if one parent, for example, was not born here? Like, say, Melania Trump. And then all of Melania Trump's children are then not citizens, right? Or all of Ivanka Trump's children are not citizens, right? So, like, what is the line, and
Right.
where are we going to stop? Because, again, it's very half-baked. I think it's very, very clear in the Constitution, and has been for well over a century, backed by the Supreme Court.
That's right.
And
It goes all the way back to the overturning of the Dred Scott decision that denied Black Americans the right and protections to U.S. citizenship. I'm reading here the ACLU article. In 1898, the U.S. Supreme Court confirmed in United States versus Wong Kim Ark that children born in the United States to immigrant parents were entitled to U.S. citizenship, and the principle has remained an undisturbed constitutional bedrock for over a century. Since 1898, right?
Yeah.
We're more than a century past when this was since this was settled in our system of laws. But here we are, kind of upending this kind of over a century old ruling.
Yeah, and whether you're saying it's both parents, whether you're saying it's just one parent, I think that will be also. I mean, there's so many gray areas.
And I think that's the assumption, right? Is that I think the person that supports this executive order probably imagines that this is a very simple situation, right? That it's kind of this up down. They either were born in this country. Sorry, your parents either had citizenship in this country or didn't. You either were born in this country or you weren't. When we delve down into the specifics, when we look at cases, the actual circumstances that lead people to immigrate, right? The multi-status families that some of whom are maybe fully documented or have full citizenship, while the other half may not. Households that have these kind of interlocking, complicated designations within our immigration system. It becomes much more difficult to begin. These to begin talking about like who does and does not have a right to be here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what this does, this is a blunt force object, right? That we're using, throwing at what are children, babies, right? Like people that have whatever issue a listener might have with immigrant who came to this country through, maybe they came undocumented, right? Maybe came on less than legal status. We're not talking about their parent, right? We are talking about this child, right? And what happens to this child, right? And I don't know. It just is for me a reminder of the just the lack of empathy, right? That I think this administration is just kicking off its first year with.
Right.
And I also learned during his inaugural speech that there are two genders now. Trump said so. Amie, is that right? We have two genders now.
I mean, literally, there are babies born, obviously, with both. Not to get too into the weeds, but with a lot of complicated stuff going on,
right?
That can be corrected. That can be put into a box. But nevertheless, that they are born literally not conforming to either gender. I mean, you can look that up.
Do you remember that Joe Biden clip where someone asks, Mr. President, how many genders are there? And he says, there are at least 3. Don't play with me, Jack.
At least 3.
Don't play with me, Jack. But we laugh, but like I think we both see that for Iowans that exist anywhere within the spectrum of gender, right? They know what this is, right? This is a red meat call out, right? That that's meant to select for. It's meant to kind of to isolate folks that experience that identify outside of kind of gender binary, right? This is not. I mean, again, in a world where we are. Where this doesn't impact, someone's official documentation, or this doesn't impact someone's health insurance, their rights, their rights to certain partnerships. In a world where none of this impacts that reality, I can see someone brushing off. But we're talking, these are real statuses, right? That are going to be used again as a blunt instrument against a minority of the country, right? That a group of people that are already under attack. And this is just an announcement from on high, right? That these folks are to be the target of our vitriol.
Right. It's striking fear. It's striking uncertainty. So they're talking about taking away the access that you have to change your documents, like your passports, your social security identification cards, basically the ability to update the gender markers on your federal identification or your driver's license. So, I mean, you could possibly not be able to travel, for example, if these things go into effect. Also directing federal agencies to exclude transgender people when enforcing laws that protect against sex discrimination. It doesn't mean you're left unprotected. There are still court cases that will protect you in some instances. There's also the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which says that transgender people have a say in where they're housed if your safety is threatened when you're incarcerated. And that was passed by Congress, which technically should override an executive order. But we're living in interesting times, Zachary.
Interesting times. Amie, he also pardoned the people arrested over the January 6th insurrection. One of them, Doug Jensen, right, has since been taken out of release from federal prison.
Doug Jensen is the most important, probably most visible one that people know about. This was the guy that was wearing that black shirt with the large Q emblazoned on the chest going like this in the AP photo, He was carrying a knife with a 3-inch blade in his pocket. He allegedly led, well, I guess it's not allegedly because he was convicted. He led a pursuit against Officer Eugene Goodman, who was a Capitol Police officer. Nothing ended up, Goodman was okay. But, the fact that he was being menacing, the fact that he was carrying a weapon on Capitol grounds trying to, incite this riot, he was given a prison term. Now, he was later released to a halfway house in Kansas City. So this is sort of like a pardon is he can get out of the halfway house now, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably the most visible one that people would remember.
Trump pardons guy that menaced a police officer.
Yep.
Way to go. Mass deportations on day one. Large-scale raids are supposed to begin this week. Amie, how are Iowans preparing for this?
Yeah, so I just did a video about this. So Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, basically said these large-scale raids are going to start happening in major cities across the U.S. No Iowa cities have been named in that, obviously. But I think immigration groups are very concerned that they will. Iowa City Catholic Worker and Escúchame Voz held a joint Zoom call about this the night of the inauguration, basically a Know Your Rights training that basically was letting advocates know how to tell people basically what to do if, they're approached by ICE officers who are usually in regular clothing, baseball caps, what to do that way. You can say no. You can stay silent. You can ask for attorney. You don't have to open the door to them. You don't have to consent to a search. And if you're a bystander and you see somebody being arrested by ICE or think you do, you have the legal right to film them. So I think things like that, just becoming known in case stuff like that starts happening here, is a really good idea. Because people are scared. They're nervous.
Right. And the reality of many of these actions means that those already living the margins, already impacting, are facing greater precarity. For our second story, this is a call to action. We want you, the listener, to begin contributing to a mutual aid group in your area. Iowa Starting Line got us started with an article kind of listing some of these resources, but maybe it's not complete. Go online to iowastartingline.com to the article. We'll post in the show notes. We Care for Us, Iowa Places to Support as Another Presidency Looms. This was put together by our social media manager, Avery Staker. So check that out. Amie, can you describe what mutual aid, direct aid is?
Yeah, it's basically saying before we can basically ask people to join the fight, we have to make sure they're taken care of. And that's what mutual aid does. It's direct help in the form of donations, be they monetary or otherwise, to the people that need them the most. So usually these are directed and targeted to specific groups. So for example, in that story, you'll find like free clothing pop-ups or resources for specifically the LGBTQ crowd,
right?
Resources to help the Black Liberation Movement in Des Moines, and then just general mutual aid in various cities to help people that are struggling. Once we are able to help people that are struggling, get them to a baseline, then we can start to talk about our values, talk about the actions that we can do to basically raise us all up and then sort of help us get beyond the fear and despair that a lot of people are feeling right now.
There are a lot of great organizations doing great work in the space. Again, I invite you to go to iowastartingline.com, check out this list of groups, and maybe pick out one to begin putting your shoulder to helping support their work during this important time. Third story, best seats in the House for billionaires at Trump's inauguration. I was watching the inauguration Monday, and as I was surveying as my eyes began to wander, I began kind of trying to get a rough tally of the net worth on stage. By my count, something like $11 trillion sat on that stage. Notably absent during Trump's address was anyone from the blue-collar working class who helped Trump get back in the White House. But sitting front row was the president's personal guests, three of the world's wealthiest men who used their media platforms to drastically shape the outcomes of last year's presidential race.
No Joe the plumber.
There was no Joe the plumber, but there were a long list of tech billionaires. Amie, do you want to go through the list with me?
Mark the CEO.
Marky Mark.
Marky Mark and the funky bunch of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, of course.
There was Apple CEO Tim Cook was in attendance. Google CEO Sundar Pichai.
Mm-hmm. And
Pichai.
TikTok CEO. Yep.
TikTok
course.
CEO Shou Chew for sure. You can't forget mega donor Miriam Adelson, who helped power Trump's campaign. This was a kind of for my money and for theirs, right? The biggest show of values that I can imagine. Starting the Trump campaign, starting the Trump administration off with, right? That here are here are the people who have his ear. Here are the people who he's thinking for getting him back into power. Here's who will shape policy going forward. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, it's just too on the nose, isn't it? Like, we all knew that he is fueled by money and bribery and flattery and all these things, but to have them just sitting there, just obviously at his right hand side, was just like, okay, yeah, he does not care that he's doing all of this in the open. That plus his little meme coin that he came
Right.
out with that made him billions of dollars. I mean, the bribery is in the open now. Like, it's just super obvious. So I think it's just a matter of like making that really, really clear that that's what he's doing going forward.
And I don't know. It would be one thing if the party that is positioning the hyper wealthy in such prominent positions, putting them in his cabinet, having them on stage with him. If this was the party that was positioning itself to prop up corporate monopolies and big power, who would be surprised by that? But
Right.
not only are they deregulating our corporate sector, not only are they deregulating our environmental protections, but they're also taking the money, taking billions from from these people. They at the same time saying that, oh no, we're actually for the common man. We actually believe in what's right for the working person. When they're doing everything they can to limit the opportunities, adding working stipulations for Medicaid, taking away, reducing the money, destabilizing workman's comp, doing everything they can to take away what little of a safety net that we have for when the excesses of our economy put someone under the boot.
Yeah, we're not even pretending it's trickled down anymore, are we? Like, we're
It's
not.
it's a suction up, actually. It's a
Suction up,
Hoover
yeah.
operation.
Right. I think there's been a faction, Bernie Sanders, of people that have been saying this for years. The wealthy in this country have too much power, and now they really just have so much power that they're just open about it. Like, here are the people that Trump has near him. Here are the ways that they are shaping our laws to benefit them and not us.
Shortly after the inauguration, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont tweeted out a photo featuring Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos all sharing all in a line for the inauguration, saying, "When I started talking about oligarchy, many people didn't understand what I meant. Well, that's changed when the three wealthiest men in America sit behind Trump at his inauguration. Everyone understands the billionaire class now controls the government. We must fight back."
Yeah.
For our cornhole matchup this week, I wanted us thinking about why we should be worried when corporate barons and billionaire oligarchs take a bigger role in our government and lives. I've got some conversations with state leaders and thinkers about why corporate greed and the power it wields is the greatest problem of our time. That's coming up on Cornhole Champions. From Meta's Mark Zuckerberg to Amazon's Jeff Bezos to the TikTok CEO and Republican mega donor Miriam Adelson. And who could forget Tesla's CEO and Trump's favorite campaign blank check, Elon Musk. The inauguration of the 47th president was, if nothing else, an obvious pony show of economic concentration. Sitting with me here is Iowa Representative J.D. Scholten of Sioux City. Through his project, the well-named You're Probably Getting Screwed, he's been documenting the ways big and small, the big moneyed interests are consolidating power in the United States and using that power to take money and keep money out of your pocket. Hello, JD.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Ahead of Monday's inauguration ceremony, I was listening, as I always do, to Steve Bannon's War Room. Steve Bannon, of course, the Rasputin of MAGA land. I saw him quoted on ABC News saying that the presence of tech billionaires on stage for President Donald Trump's ceremony was a sign of their, quote, official surrender to Trump. Does Bannon have that right, JD?
I mean, there was a bended knee for sure. It's very interesting to see, and like it's weird to see. It's even at the state level, the like people who sit next to me who are hardcore Republicans, and to see that overlap in that like hatred of this oligarchy. There is something to be said about there is something on the far right and uh in the anti-monopoly movement where I'm at. There is overlap there, and I don't always. Well, I'm not the biggest Steve Bannon fan, nor am I the biggest Steve King fan, but there's little slivers where we overlap.
And it's this point here, right?
Yeah.
Consolidation. Spin that out. Like why is for someone new to the conversation, why is this a problem for the United States?
Well, the whole reason I started my Substack that you're probably getting screwed is because when I ran for the congressional seat in the 4th district, you just go from town to town and you see that we have not bounced back since the 2008 economic crisis. And when I was looking at the front row of billionaires, tech billionaires, and then the second row was the cabinet. I mean, that was very stunning, to say the least, and also very exemplary of what's happening at this time. And so I think with everything that's going on right now, I think of the Louis Brandeis quote that says, "We must make a choice. We have a democracy, or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we cannot have both." And like, to me, there's no more clear picture of what's happening in America right now than that quote.
And what choice have we made? It's been that quote out, right? Like, what choice have we made?
I mean, as of right now, we've chose to have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, and we're seeing that all throughout every industry almost. And so in Iowa, agriculture is a huge part of our economy, and you see like 85% of beef is concentrated with 4 companies. You see it in seed, you see it in fertilizer, you see it on the input side, you see it on the market side. And in the state of Iowa, you see these multinational corporations extract the wealth from our communities and leave us with literal shit in hog manure, you know? And that's how I feel like these multinational corporations treat us. And so it is a dark time, I feel, for this country, and we're going to go through some hard times here economically in the state of Iowa, because most economists consider the egg industry to be in a recession at this time. But what I'm hopeful for is that there's been this undercurrent for a while now. All these tech billionaires have been influential in every presidency in the past decade, but now they're coming to the forefront. So hopefully America wakes up and we do have that choice to make. And so that's the thing that does give me hope, is that this is coming to the forefront, and that people who haven't been paying attention can see how clearly things are wrong right now.
What is this the kind of like contents of this crowd tell you about the priorities going forward?
I mean, the biggest thing Trump did in his first term and has been on the campaign trail talking about is tax breaks for the super wealthy, continued tax breaks. And so I think that's a huge part of why you see all these mega donors, these huge wealthy people are flocking towards him at this time. I'm scared, for the Iowa economy, because you look at companies like Come and Go and Wells Blue Bunny, and like IDP sold to Tyson. Tyson ended up moving 500 jobs to Arkansas, with Come and Go and Wells Blue Bunny selling to out of state and out of country corporations. What does that mean to our communities? And like, I worry about our economy, and when you have that concentrated few, they're going to do well. But we've realized that 4 decades since Reagan, trickle-down economics is a joke. Right. And what are we going to do about an economy that works for everyone? So that's where, like, I am proudly part of the anti-monopoly movement. This is, I feel like, our time as the anti-monopolist to shine and really go out and talk about how corporate greed is getting in the way of an economy that works for everybody.
If the question is, do we care about rising prices, right? I think that's got to be something at the center of any discussion, right? But does consolidated wealth do anything to make prices lower?
So when you have a concentration of few, and this is what most economists can agree upon, is anything above about 40% of market share is economic concentration. So if 4 companies control 40% of an industry or more, and so when you have like the beef industry, four companies control 85%. And you saw what happened during that pandemic. I thought it put a spotlight on this issue. So you have farmers getting squeezed, you have workers being suppressed, you have consumers paying the most they ever have, and almost every one of these multinational corporations have had record profits. And now you're seeing stock buybacks instead of investing back into the workers or the community or to give consumers a break. That's when you have competition, that leads to lower prices, better for workers, better for consumers.
Yeah. If we're in the Iowa legislature legislative session, if the anti-monopoly cause had a short list of items to get accomplished, what would be? Do you have a sense of what that would look like for on a state level?
Yeah, I think there's two things that pop into my head. The first is campaign finance reform. Without a doubt, especially since Citizens United, you have a disproportionate amount of power in the hands of the super wealthy, and they can influence elections. You saw how J.D. Vance won his Senate seat was Peter Thiel gave him millions and millions of dollars. So there's that side of it. And what I really want to do in Iowa is create a regional food system. 90% of the food we eat is imported. The average produce at the grocery store travels 1,500 miles. And so we have a choice. And I firmly believe that food security is national security. So we have a choice. Do we want to grow more things in America where it means that workers have more opportunity, where we can eat healthier, and the money that is purchased to buy some of these produce stays locally, or this current system that is extremely vulnerable? And we see that in dairy, where we have 18,000 head dairy farms in Southwest United States where there's hardly any water, and yet we're losing dairy farms left and right here in the Midwest. So for me, like, some of those things are what I'm very passionate about and what I would do to help challenge economic concentration.
Iowa Representative J.D. Scholten of Sioux City is in the seats of the Iowa legislature. You can follow his work at You're Probably Getting Screwed. What's the Substack URL for that?
Screwed.substack.com.
Easy enough. JD, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Sitting with me here is Iowa Senator Zach Wahls of Coralville. I wanted to hear a little bit. So we're talking just a couple hours after the inauguration finished up. And I wondered for you, was this something you watched?
Yeah, I wasn't able to catch it live, but I watched it as soon as I could afterwards. And, look, unfortunately, I think it's going to be just another setup to 4 more years of Donald Trump's rhetoric not matching his actions. And you saw that on full display today, right? He spent a lot of time during the campaign saying that he was for the middle class, but it's the billionaires who funded his campaign with the best seats in the House at his inauguration. And so, unfortunately, I'm expecting a lot of the same for the next 4 years of Trump that we saw during his first term.
These moments set a tone maybe for the next 4 years. They give us they kind of symbolize. They give us like a sense of kind of what is and is not valued. And I wonder what we should be thinking about as we're looking at this stage of the very wealthy, of the obscenely wealthy at inauguration 47.
Well, look, the people who invested in Trump's campaign are expecting a return on their investment. Elon Musk has already gotten it in a pretty big way. As I think he wound up spending $250 million, and his net worth has increased like substantially since the election. Other folks, we saw just the other day the launch of this meme coin, right, which is going to be a gold mine for corruption and for foreign actors to basically launder money into Trump's coffers. When they want access to him. I think that, again, you're going to see him implement policies that are going to overwhelmingly benefit the ultra rich, just like he did the first time he was in office, when he cut taxes for millionaires and billionaires in a big way and didn't really do much for middle class folks. In fact, a lot of middle class Americans saw their taxes go up during Trump's first term. And I think that's really unfortunate, because I think a lot of Iowans voted for Trump because they want lower prices. But unfortunately, everything that I'm seeing that he's proposed, it's going to increase costs for Iowa families. Tariffs are a really good example of that, right? Trump says that he wants lower costs, but tariffs are taxes. And as president, he implemented policies that significantly increased those prices for consumer goods. It made a lot of Iowa exports, whether those are agricultural products or manufacturing products, a lot more expensive. And then also you saw retaliation from other countries that raised taxes essentially on American exports, made them less competitive. And so, unfortunately, again, it's a really good example of how Trump's rhetoric rarely actually matches what he does in reality. And unfortunately, it's Iowa families who are going to pay the price for that.
We're an Iowa show, and we're focused on Iowa stories. You're at the Iowa legislature, which just got into session. I wondered to see if you had if there were some pieces of legislation that you wanted to point us to as examples of kind of a different path the state could be taking at this moment.
Well, look, I mean, I think you can draw a pretty straight line from Trump's saber rattling with Canada to this bill that was introduced to annex southern Minnesota the other day. And unfortunately, the fact that we're even talking about that is a perfect illustration of how you have this administration that is talking about so many things and then kind of absorbing energy that when that energy and that time should be focused on the things that really matter the most for people, right? Whether that's trying to
You're not talking about the price of eggs, right? Are we hearing about the eggs again?
right, exactly. Yeah, look, and there's a lot of things that we can do, right? We can go after the cost of childcare. I've got a 10-month-old here at home. I'll tell you, cost of childcare for a lot of middle class families super expensive. We could be trying to figure out how do we continue to lower the price of housing, especially in some of our larger metro areas. Cost of housing is increasingly unaffordable for a lot of middle class Iowans, especially younger middle class Iowans. We could be talking about how do we go after government efficiency. Another good example, right? You saw Governor Reynolds call for her own Iowa Doge in her condition of the state, while the same Republican legislature has been, going after the ability of our state auditor, who's like literally the original Doge in a lot of ways here in Iowa, right? His ability to do his job and audit, whether it's state agencies, local governments, to find taxpayer waste, fraud, and abuse. And those are the kinds of things that, we, I think, easily could come together on. But unfortunately, what we've seen from Republicans at both the national level and here in Iowa is that they turn around, give massive tax cuts to the rich, and then slash funding for the services that middle class and working class Iowans depend on. I mean, sorry, I feel like I'm kind of rambling now, but Trump's new Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, wants to abolish the Department of Education. I mean, how is that going to help Iowa kids learn? It doesn't make sense to me.
Zach Wahls, thanks for joining me for a little bit. Do you want to plug anything while you're on the show?
Now that TikTok's back online, you can find me. I'm still on TikTok, still on Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. Blue Sky, getting a little bit more active there.
With TikTok, if we can keep it.
TikTok, if we can keep it, we'll see. But we're, as you said, we're at the start of the legislative session. Always happy to hear from folks about whatever kind of issues, concerns they may have. I'm hearing a lot from people about some ongoing challenges with the privatization of Medicaid. So trying to do some good work there this year. But don't hesitate to reach out. We'll do our best to help however we can.
Senator Zach Wahls, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Zach.
Last, we've spent enough time on this episode talking about consolidation more broadly. For our last conversation, we turned to Austin Frerick. Last year, his book Barons, Money, Power, and Corruption of America's Food Industry looked at the way 7 robber barons have manipulated the market to reap their fortunes. Hello, Austin.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. I wanted to kind of hear a little bit about how this project started. You're an Iowa native, even though you've moved since. Tell me about where this project begins.
I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but this whole thing started at Carl's in Des Moines.
Get out.
Yeah. I feel like you get the best gossip in a book from dive bars, but I was having Busch Lights with a political operative, and they were complaining to me just about the race, the 2018 governor's race in Iowa, Cam Reynolds versus Fred Hubbell, and how the largest donor was this hog farmer, Jeff and Deb Hansen. I think they'd given Cam Reynolds like $300,000 at that point. They had this mansion, this guy was telling me, over by Jordan Creek in West Des Moines. They have a mansion down in Naples, Florida. But the detail that caught my eye was that they had a private jet that they would fly back and forth between the two with the words allegedly when pigs fly, which I say allegedly because I was never able to prove it, but that is first of all, what powerful copy, but also
what powerful copy, and we do it
I
for the
mean,
copy. The writers,
that's
and
something
Wahls.
I mean, like I have like an academic brain, but you got to have a powerful image. You know, I can tell someone has X amount of money,
Right.
but when you write on a private jet when takes flight, that just you can't put a dollar sign to that, you know?
Okay, so you were hearing about the political connection, the way that this hog baron was connected to Reynolds' campaign in 2018, the Hubble campaign. Tell me about how you began kind of unpacking that this kind of question, and you like how closely related is this powerful industry with this political campaign?
Yeah, so I really stewed on that detail, and also it's me also grappling with at the time of kind of the anger I see in my family. A lot of my family are Trump supporters. What's happened to Iowa in my lifetime? Why you drive in Iowa, you don't see animals anymore, but you smell them. So I worked with my buddy Charlie Mitchell, who's a journalist, and we wrote an article for Vox about a hog baron, about Jeff and Deb Hansen. And I wanted to write that article because I wanted to understand, how did they amass this much power? How did they become the most powerful donor in the state of Iowa? How did they come to do like 5 million hogs a year with 7,000 employees? So I did that article. And what I love about that piece is it's a catchy, punchy narrative vehicle to tell a bigger structural story. You know, I'm really telling you about the regulatory capture of Iowa, but I'm telling it through a punchy, you know, trashy Florida money story, to be
Right.
frank. And I realized, what we saw here in the hog industry, you see in other commodities across America. And so that's how the book Barons came about. Is I'm profiling 7 robber barons. I have a dairy baron, berry baron, grocery, but each baron's really a narrative device to tell about a bigger thing in the food system.
Tell me a little bit about what you learned about Driscoll. This is for folks that may not have paid much attention to the packaging of their berries. If you bought raspberries in the last, I don't know how long, if you bought a package of berries at your grocery store, it's likely a Driscoll product. Can you tell me about how a little bit about what you learned about the Driscoll family?
Yeah, the Driscoll one this one tends to shock people the most because they sell 1 in 3 berries in America, but they do not grow a single berry. It's such this chapter was wild and one of the harder ones to write, because when I originally started to write this chapter, what I actually really wanted to write about was so much of the produce system in America has been offshored. Like 40% of your vegetables, 60% of your fruit now comes from the board outside this country. And like that, I just realized that anecdotally because growing up in Lynn County, all the apple orchards I grew up with are gone. But it's not like they're subdivisions; they're just more corn. So I want to kind of figure that story out. And I was looking at Driscoll's, and I realized, oh, Driscoll's is they're doing what Nike does. Like Nike doesn't actually make anything; it contracts out production. But for Driscoll's, this sounds so weird to say, they took this whole thing from chicken. They call it chickenization, where 100 years ago, when we wrote regulations in response to Upton Sinclair's book, The Jungle, to tackle the meat monopolies, we didn't write chicken to the regulations because there weren't commercial chicken slaughterhouses. You just had chicken in your backyard. You literally butchered it. So with that little loophole, corporations down south took that really exploited model to sharecroppers, to black sharecroppers, and applied it to chicken production. So like to this day in America, if you're a chicken farmer, you don't own your bird. You're basically given the bird to babysit by the corporation. You're given the feed. You take on a ton of debt to grow the bird out. You give it back to the corporation. You're paid in a really exploitive way called a tournament system. And the stats are a little old, but like 70% of chicken farmers now live in poverty. Here's the thing though, when you engage in a really exploitive model, it's really profitable for the corporation, and chickens are getting a lot of market share in America. And kind of the undercurrent of my book is USDA could have stepped in and be like, no, chicken, behave like the other meats. But instead we see a race to the bottom. So like famously, the hog industry in Iowa got chickenized. It went that model. And then I realized writing this, oh, that's what Driscoll's did. And like no one had ever made that connection of like, they want to own the IP, but they want to like push off the growing to the riskiest part to someone else. On top of it, a lot of this berry production is moving offshore where you can exploit labor in the environment. And because, you know, as supply chains get long, transparency collapses. And so I say all this too, because keep in mind what this does is it undermines people doing it right. How can you compete on price against the production model employing 12-year-olds? So that's why Driscoll's is a weird chapter, because it's doing all that kind of weird things, but you see Driscoll's everywhere. I mean, the scary thing about Driscoll's and the brilliance of them, they saw the rise of Walmart, and they realized one company wants 4 berries year round for 4,000 stores. And by having a production model where they grow berries on every continent in the world except Antarctica, they're able to fulfill that need.
You wrote a large chapter about Walmart, right? And its consolidation of grocery stores in the United States. Can you walk me through a little bit of what you learned?
Yeah, so I want to talk about groceries just because, first of all, everyone loves, I can just tell anecdotally, people have a lot of hot takes on grocery stores. And also, like, I think it's because my dad used to be a beer merchandiser, salesman. So, like, I just love grocery stores. But I was originally going to write about Publix as my grocery baron. It's like a Florida store because they help finance January 6th. So I was like, oh, like this is an interesting narrative.
Totally.
But then you start looking at the grocery data, and it's just you have to write about Walmart. I mean, Walmart, its market share in grocery is they sell 1 in 3, but it's the same as the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th combined. Like they're the king of kings. Like no one else is at their level. Like I think the most powerful person in the American food system is a Walmart buyer because you are buying food for 1 in 3 Americans.
Wow. And okay, spin out the problem there, right? Okay, so what if Walmart maintains this large piece of the market, right, in terms of the options that Americans have to buy their groceries? Like, what does that power look like? How does that what power does that give them?
So every chapter is kind of framed around a story, and this one's framed around Amazon and Walmart as like Godzilla versus Mothra in this epic battle centered in grocery. But before I did that frame, I originally was going to frame this chapter as Walmart's the closest thing we've ever had in America to a Soviet Union style Politburo.
What do you mean?
Supply with Walmart, and I had someone tell me it's supply and command. You do not negotiate with Walmart. Walmart dictates its terms to you.
Is that because it's just so large? It's such a large buyer, right? That if you're a grower of squash, right, and you're producing squash on a really large level, right? The largest share of the market is because Walmart makes up such a large part of the market, because they are such a large buyer. You live and die. Your business succeeds or fails based on your ability to keep that contract. Is that sort of the piece?
Yes. To me, the best example of that power is Walmart has a rule where no more than 30% of your sales as a supplier to Walmart can come from Walmart. To be honest with you, I didn't understand that at first. I had to ask someone at Hy-Vee why they do that. And this person told me, he's like, Austin, this is a supply chain risk management role. Walmart knows it's such a vulture. You basically sell to them at loss or cost that you need to get 7% of your sales from elsewhere to make up for that. So it's almost like a waterbed effect. Because you can't lose Walmart. If you're running Driscoll's, you can't lose a third of your sales. And so you basically have to make people who go to Fairway Hy-Vee pay more to offset the losses you have from Walmart, because Walmart's dictating that to you. So what it does is actually reinforces Walmart's power, and it pushes Walmart's advantage ahead and ahead.
I wanted to hear a little bit from you about like connecting kind of what you're seeing in the commodity markets to kind of that bigger thought on the role that these massive corporations and their the fortunes that they amass for these billionaires, right? Like what you make of that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a simple thing, but I realized it a few years ago, sitting in on a business school class. The goal of any corporate executive is monopoly. That's where profits are. So you have a fundamental tension between business wanting monopoly and government not, because it stifles innovation, hurts workers, yada, yada, yada. I just think we're just living another laissez-faire Gilded Age moment, and you're seeing people use their economic power to corrupt the political system to reinforce their economic power. The meat market's most concentrated it's ever been in America, and I think it's such a piñata saying "hit me," because you have companies now employing children, and people are being gouged. I mean, like the first slide I show when I present my book to people is what Americans spend at the grocery store compared to other countries, because I realized talking to people is I'm asking you in the back of their minds, I'm asking you to pay more for food, because Farm Bureau and all these people will say, well, the system makes cheap food, but when you actually pull the data. Per capita, Americans spend more money, and this is in 2021 data. So this is before the whole greed inflation thing took hold. According to USDA data, we spend more money per person on food than a lot of other Western democracies, more than Germany, Canada, United Kingdom. And we're about dollar for Italy. And like anyone that's been to Italy knows what a dollar gets you there is very different than here. thing. We shouldn't be shocked. Concentrated markets gouge. And I really do think the most concentrated space in America is food.
Austin Frerick is the author of Barron's Money, Power, and Corruption of America's Food Industry. It's a must read for anyone who cares about the space. Austin, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So, Amie, what'd you think?
I mean, this is something that JD has been harping on for a long time. I'm sure Zach Wahls has been talking about it too, but I've been following, JD's You're Probably Getting Screwed Substack for a while.
Right.
And he's on the corporate consolidation train. I mean, he knows that is what is driving up prices. That is what is depressing worker wages. And that's what we have the power to solve as a government. So I think maybe there's a greater impetus now, especially that we've seen billionaires cozying up to Trump, to try to solve some of these things at the local action level.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really valuable from my perspective. I think the value that local journalism, local writing, local thinking can do for us is it takes this, it takes this national story where the most powerful people on stage attend the presidential inauguration ceremony, and puts it in terms. The reason I like the Austin Frerick interview, right, was it connects it to this greater system, right? This is not just happening in tech. This is not just happening in political financing, right? That it's in our food, it's in our water, it's part of everything. And if we want to begin, fighting back, right? If it starts with the realization of just how big this problem is, how twisted this network of funding is.
I love that he said they're literally leaving us with the shit.
That's right.
They're sucking all the money out and leaving us the shit.
Yeah. So thanks to JD, thanks to Zach, and thanks to Austin for joining us. I also wanted to plug something. I came on an episode of a local podcast, Rock Hard Caucus, last week, promoting Iowa Starting Line and this show. I have a cut of that conversation we can play right now.
Well, I kind of like that because it's like the further fracturing and splintering of like consensus reality, where like we're all gonna have different maps with different names for everything at some point. Like I don't accept your reasoning. I don't accept your naming system of all of these geographical areas, and I'm going to make my own.
Bummer for the programmer at Google Maps.
Yeah.
We need Rumble Maps, the competitor with the Trump approved
Rumble
names.
Oh man, that's good.
Truth.maps.
Yeah.
Thanks to Justin and Evan for having me on. Always good to chat with some folks that get it. That was another episode of Cornhole Champions. If you like the show, please rate it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. While you're at it, sign up for my newsletter at cornholechampions.substack.com and get these episodes straight to your inbox when they drop Wednesday mornings. Cornhole Champions is a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line. This podcast is produced by me with music from Avery Mossman. Cornhole Champions is a proud member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. We'll see you with a new episode next Wednesday. Until then, I'm Zachary Oren Smith.
And I'm Amie Rivers.
Thanks for listening.